Hellripper is a Scottish black thrash metal band, black speed metal, if you will. I think this record moves a little bit more towards thrash metal. Warlocks Grim and Withered Hags is a uh, probably the biggest shift in his discography so far. It's the third album, and it's time to change. It's time to do something different and incorporate more influences, and he certainly does. It helps this record feel a lot more expressive, um, uh, maybe a little bit more illustrative of its themes as those change as well, because this album focuses more on Scottish folklore and a lot of the folk horrors available to Scottish um, yeah, legend, whether it's a cave full of a cannibalistic clan, which has not been proven, and like the Nuckalabee, which we'll find on this first clip here as we introduce ourselves to the sound of the album. So the big thing to say about James McBain, the main guy behind it, is that he's always been a fantastic guitarist, and he's always known that to really pull this kind of music off, you really need to be not only a charismatic, performer, but also play with a certain charisma to it. And he just happens to be a fantastic guitarist who is able to work up to this standard of 80s heavy metal, and especially the late 80s extreme metal. There's a careful study of what worked best about thrash metal throughout the 80s, and where he could incorporate like Venom and Motorhead kind of influences into that. But the early thrash metal influences and like maybe the first Megadeth album have a lot more to do with his sound now, as he begins to incorporate more black metal influences, which might range from Dissection to Opeth, given in any given moment. And you especially feel Dave Mustaine's influence on his playing on this album. I think it had been there on the previous album in 2020, The Affair of the Poisons, but this one, it's much more pronounced. And I happen to be a huge Megadeth fan, so this, well, up until a certain point, but there's a lot of that on this record. You can feel it in his playing and the way that he approaches trading off solos, riffs, and lining those things up. There's a bit of running wild in there too, and for me, all those things add up to a sound which should sound a lot like Nocturnal Witch, a little bit like Disaster, but he ends up putting his own personality into it, not only with the subject and the way that he approaches vocals, but in slowing down a little bit, still hammering away at the first half, especially at the thrash metal riff fest that he's kind of known for, but now pulling into away from the more standard speed metal stuff into more of a thrash, what I would see as a thrash and a new wave of British heavy metal combination, and as we look to structure and the kind of riff by riff of it. But I won't cut it down all the way to to nuts like I normally would. I think the main point to make is that this is a really enjoyable record to listen to. I found that side A was kind of where all the excitement laid. It was a little front loaded, but the second half steadies out. It reminds us that this is a black thrash metal record, and that he's gonna sit in the trenches for a song or two before the big reveal. And I think it makes for a good dynamic for a record, especially if you're flipping it in between, where there's plenty of energy, but it's not just a shotgun fest in terms of riffs and leads and all that. So overall, it's a very big improvement over what he's been doing already, but it's also just kind of a different thing in a lot of ways. And I think that'll be probably more profound than the artist might have expected, in terms of just people seeing a lot more growth at a very surprising rate. So I was very impressed with this, gave it a high recommendation, and pretty high recommendation for general audiences. I think most people can pick this up and feel the spirit of thrash metal in there. And I think I know that sounds cheesy, but it's important to remember that guitar music is pretty fucking cool. So check it out if that's your kind of thing.